There I was, afraid out of my mind, as I watched my horse speed away in the other direction, and I was freaking out, not knowing exactly what to do. I looked back at my best friend, and he's looking at me like, "What are you gonna do?" Hi, my name is Michael Johnson. I'm a ballroom dance professional, a life coach, and a peak performance expert. I'm part of a group of motivated people who are dedicated to attaining emotional mastery and unlocking our full potential. We've realized life is a dance. The ups and downs can spin you out of your mind, but it's time to take back control. It's time to become a lifer. We don't believe others are responsible for how we feel. In fact, we don't believe anyone can make us feel anything. We are a new breed of overachievers. Emotional mastery is our journey, and unlocking our full potential is the key. Welcome to the journey. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about this story. Years ago, when I was dancing professionally, I was first getting started, and I needed some extra work, and one of my students had some horses, and so they asked me if I'd be willing to ride them, because I grew up riding horses and taking care of horses and stuff like that with my dad, and so it was a great opportunity. I knew how to take care of them and how to ride them, and they needed some exercise, so a few times a week I'd go up to their ranch and ride their horses for them and get paid for it. It was a really cool deal, and it was a lot of fun. I had just a great time, but of course, as any of you may know, if you've ridden horses, there's always some great stories to come along with it. And so one time I had taken up one of my buddies. He had just moved out to start teaching dance as well, and he was also versed on horses because he grew up on a ranch. And we headed up into the woods, and I had found on a map, yes, there were not cell phones or Google Maps at that time, and I had found on a map that there was this lake, and I thought, gosh, that'd be fun to go ride to this lake. And so he and I saddled up and got ready to go, because we figured we were going to be out for a nice long ride, and brought some food, and we headed out to go find this lake that was off in the middle of the woods, and it was pretty simple, you know. We thought, okay, we'll follow a few of these paths, we'll get to the lake. And so a couple hours later of riding, we finally approached this lake. It was beautiful. We finally got to it. You know how you can hear water in the forest? If you haven't had this experience, you've got to have it. If you're walking through the forest, you can hear water. You can hear streams or anything like that. Now, this was just a lake, but you could kind of hear it. There's something very distinct about it. And so as we rode closer, we rode into, right to the edge, and there was a clearing, and you could see out, and this lake it wasn't huge. I mean, this is not like a boating lake or anything, but it was pretty big. And so, as we looked around, it looked like you could see, a great distance away. And it seemed as though there were trails, and we were following a general trail to get there. And so it seemed as though there were some trails that might lead around the lake. But, this wasn't like an area where people really frequented a lot. And so we thought, well, gosh, it'll be fun. Let's take a ride around this lake. We'll ride around the shore of this lake and see all the sights. And it was a nice long day of a ride. So it was great. So we start going around this trail. We decided to go to the left. There was a couple of choices, obviously, left or right. And we start riding down this trail. Now, the trail is clearly just meant for horses. There's no doubt about it. And there really wasn't much room. I mean, I suppose somebody could walk through it, but recently there had been some storms, and so along the way we found ourselves clearing the trail, which is just sort of the nice thing to do. If you're the first one there, you clear out the trail, and if there's anything in the way. And so this is a long ride. I mean, we were getting on and off our horses, and clearing off branches here or there, or debris that had fallen into the trail. And in some instances, there were big, huge mud holes and puddles and water and areas where we had to walk the horses around. And there were a couple times along the way, because, we're on this trail for about an hour. And there were a couple times where a huge tree had fallen. And I'm talking huge, like the kind that you can't hug, that kind of big kind of tree trunk that had fallen across the trail. And you could go around it a bit, or you could duck under it. But it was harder because you had a horse, trying to get a horse to duck under a big, huge tree is not exactly your best option. And so most of the time, you would look at that tree and it was like, well, we could, that there's not really a case to jump over. The tree was at least up to their chest, and they weren't jumping horses or anything like that. They were just trail horses. And so we would go around and we'd clear an area to walk around the tree and keep going. Or if it was really tall up at their head level, we'd try to coax them to ducking under, which was a little harder if it wouldn't clear the saddle. So there were a few times like that, and we just kept going and figuring we just take our time. We weren't in a hurry. We were enjoying the day. We were enjoying the forest and the lake out to our right, and we kept going and going and going. About, we must have been an hour and a half into that trail around the lake, and we got to an area where you couldn't really see where the trail went next. It was just covered in bushes, and they were like these prickly bushes that had like spikes on them. I don't even know what they were. They were like thorn bushes almost. And so you didn't want to just go through them, and we didn't want to tear up the horses' legs. And obviously, these are not our horses, so we didn't want to be like, let's just, Leroy Jenkins and run right through. So we decided to, try to clear some of that out. But like I said, this trail was set up so that you could really only be in single file. And so I was in the front. And I was like, that's okay. I'll get off the horse and I'll try to clear some of this out, because it looked like there was maybe a trail about 10, 15 feet up ahead. And I thought, well, I could probably clear some of this out and it won't rip up the horse's legs and it should be fine. So I got off the horse and I thought to myself, well, there's nowhere really for this horse to go, because, again, we were in single file. There was no real area on the left. There was no real area on the right. And I figured it's totally fine. Where's the horse going to go? Out into the lake or into some trees on the left? Whatever. But my buddy was behind me, and he was on his horse. So I thought, I can do this. So I got off my horse and I'm not sure if I had a machete or something, and I started clearing out some of the way. But almost immediately as I got off my horse, John's horse, my buddy John, his horse started prancing around and getting really antsy. Horses have a really crazy sixth sense about their surroundings. They really do sense their surroundings, and they have great ears. And so his horse started prancing around and freaking out and like shaking and wiggling and trying to be just being a real pain to John. And he's trying to calm him down, and I'm just, I kind of ignored it. But then I look back and my horse is starting to prance and get a little antsy, and they're looking around, and best we could think was maybe there was another big animal, like a big cat or a bear or something nearby. But just without even any sort of warning, I guess that was a warning. I should have paid attention and grabbed the reins or whatever. But I didn't. I just didn't think twice about it. And sure enough, my horse rears up on its back legs, and its front legs are up. And of course, so that moves me away. And the other horse is freaking out. John's yelling at the other horse to calm down. My horse somehow, because it reared up on its hind legs, it kind of turned itself around right in that spot, and it nudges its way right past John. John doesn't grab it because he's freaking out, because his horse is freaking out. I'm standing there in utter bewilderment, totally afraid, because I started to realize in that instance that this horse was going to bolt, and it pushes past John and his horse, nudges them over, and squeezes through this little teeny space in the trail and takes off at a full-on sprint. And I'm sitting there in complete fear, looking ahead, and John looks back at me and goes, he's like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. These are not my horses. I was like, "John, get off your horse," right? And I don't know, he just did. He got off his horse. I jumped on his horse, turned that horse around, and bolted off after the other horse. And the best I can describe it is, in that moment of fear, I didn't know what to do. You know, it was fight or flight, and it wasn't my horse. These weren't my horses. And I'm thinking, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, where was this horse going to go, you know? And all I could think of was, I can't lose this horse. Like, you can't lose a horse. How do you lose a horse? That's not good, right? And so I jump on the horse, bolt off after this horse, and I am going at full speed. Now, the horse I'm on thinks it's a race. It's the smaller of the two horses. It's also the slower of the two horses. The other one is fast as can be. So it's way far ahead, and I can see it ahead just barely. And I'm running through this trail that we've slowly cleared out along the way and had to go around and take detours and whatnot. And up ahead, I see the horse. You know, I'm catching up a little bit because the horse that I'm on thinks it's a race, or a game or something, and thinks it's fun. And up ahead, I see what I was dreading, and it was the first of one of these crazy obstacles that we had chosen to go around, and it was this big, huge tree trunk that was up to about their chest level. And I see the horse ahead full on jump and clear it. And I'm thinking to myself, I am not a jumper on a horse. Like, this is not something I do, right? And I had done it a little bit when I was young, but nothing major, just like over little stumps. And my horse speeds up, and you can tell that there was nothing I could do about it. He speeds up and full on jumps over this log, and we keep going, and I'm chasing this horse. And I must have chased it for 5 miles. Easy. And all along the way, we're ducking trees and dodging things. And, there was this huge, huge tree that had fallen that we had squeezed the horses under. The horse ahead dives underneath it. My horse is like, well, I'm not going to stop. So I find myself riding on the side of my horse, like Indiana Jones. I'm on the side of my horse, flying through this log. We get out into the clearing. It opens up. He turns the corner, ends up on this huge road, and I chased him down for miles. We finally, I caught up to the horse. They started slowing down, reached over and grabbed his reins, but mostly by his face, by his halter, and finally slowed down this horse. The reins were torn to pieces, and finally got the horses under control. And this was one of those experiences that you just never forget. But the thing I want to point out to you here, we started walking back, and slowly but surely we met up with John. He had started walking back. The poor guy had to walk miles to catch up with us. But the thing that really stands out to me as I look back at this is that we so often look at fear as this negative thing. Everybody talks about don't act with fear, don't operate with fear, don't have fear. I want to live a life without fear. And I want to point out that when it comes to emotional states and emotional feelings, fear isn't always bad. Fear is meant to get us into that fight or flight mode. And sometimes we have to fly. Sometimes we have to get the heck out of there. And that's what that fear is meant to do. It's meant to activate our full senses, bring adrenaline into full effect, and get us very alert. And it's important that you realize that that's great. That's a totally useful thing for fear. But sometimes fear moves us. Sometimes fear says, you're done. This is it. You must be afraid, and now it is time to act, to fight, to step up and do something that requires you to act in fear. And so fear can be great. It can be a great motivator. It can be a great emotion to learn how to utilize. Fear is necessary. We don't want to get rid of fear. It is necessary on so many instances. In this instance, fear. I was so afraid I was going to lose this horse. I was also afraid of what the horses were afraid of. Was it a big cat? Was it a big bear? I don't know what it was, but my first thought was, I've got to act. I got to fight. I got to find some way to get this horse back. I cannot lose this horse. And so fear moved me into action. Along the way, fear kept me doing stupid things like riding on the side of my horse, which, by the way, I had never done up until that point. I felt like one of those acrobatic riders. Jumping over a horse, like, what do? I was afraid out of my mind, but you just keep going. I had to get that horse. And fear does some ridiculously crazy things. So what do? You just embrace it and you go with the fear. See, not all emotions are bad. In fact, I would venture to guess that none of the emotions that you have are negative. They're all there for a reason. They all are in our life for us to experience and to have and to be able to utilize. In this instance, I got the positive end of what fear did for me. So, what can you use? What can you do with fear? What have you done with fear to help motivate you and push you to do something outside of your range? I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at info@magicforlife.com. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you used fear for in a positive way to accomplish. Send it to me at info@magicforlife. And if you have a great critique, we'd love a review. Send us a review at that same email address, info@magicforlife. We'd love to hear from you. And if you send me a review, we'll read it. We'll put it on the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to share your comments with the audience. It's something we're going to do more of in the new year. And we've got some really cool things planned for this coming year. So, hope this helps you with talking about fear today, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Happiness is a choice. Sadness is a choice. All emotions are a choice. Sometimes doing our emotions doesn't seem like it's our choice, but it is. You have control. You are the captain of your ship, and you must learn how to be the best captain you can be. Let me show you how. Pick up your free copy of my new book, Every Minute, at everyminutebook.com.